Okay, I'm very pleased to be invited to have a lecture about low intensity, extreme high frequency electromagnetic radiation and the application of this radiation in medicine and biology. May I introduce myself? I'm a physicist studying molecular and biophysics, and in the last 5-6 years I was engaged in the field of biological application of this electromagnetic radiation in the range between Earths. The research in this kind of electromagnetic radiation, it's a major and important contribution of the Russian science and Russian scientists to the biological and medical research. There's electromagnetic radiation in medicine. Nearly 100 years ago started the first experiments, and doctors are always open for this kind of therapy. That's why we have a wide experience, and I try, and a lot of different devices. I try to demonstrate the possibilities of this kind of devices, this kind of radiation, on the example of the devices Akatom, which were developed in Russia in the town or city Tomsk by Mr. Alexander Kozhenyakin. That's why we choose the name Akatom. The development was started already in the early 70s. In this kind of research, it was secret research because there was some thinking to use this kind of radiation in military use, but later on it became clear that the military use is impossible, but medical and biological effects are very high and could be used in medicine. It's very helpful to use this device in physiotherapy. And later on, in the early 90s, last century, Mr. Kozhenyakin founded his own small company, and nowadays is producing these devices with different use and different design. Some of them, I'll show you later, have the EU certificate for medical devices, so it can be used, these devices can be used in the European Union in medicine and in physiotherapy, in rehabilitation. The same procedure was realized by another partner in the United States. So there is a technical FDA registration for these devices, and they are distributed in the United States too. In the last years, the firm tried to get certificates for different Asiatic states too. So maybe in the nearest future, in China and in other Asiatic countries, it's possible to use this too. What are the advantages of these kind of devices? One major advantage is that the EHF therapy, the electromagnetic radiation in the gigahertz range, has resonance modes in many biological systems. That's why these devices can be used to be during the break. I must sing a song or something like this. Okay, you will follow. Okay. So now we have the presentation on screen, and we can start again. The devices I described, which are produced in Tomsk, they are very helpful because it can be realized the so-called EHF therapy, with the electromagnetic radiation of extremely high frequency. And there are different possibilities to use these devices and to use resonance frequency of biological systems or of the human being to support the therapy process or to gain and start the therapy. In addition, these devices have the possibility to realize an infrared therapy with infrared radiation and the so-called BRR therapy, background resonance radiation, which will be described later. The devices are very compact, battery-powered devices, and the intensity of radiation is very low, in the range of some milliwatt impulse energy, and in the average it means it's microwatt, which will be put in the biological system in the human body. That means not the intensity of the radiation is the healing process, but the information which is gained inside the biological system or transferred from other systems to the human body. What means a low intensity for the human body? It means that there is no heating inside the tissue. The criteria for this low intensity is that the heating in the biological tissue is less than 0.1 degree centigrade. And it's very good, there are very good possibilities to combine the therapy with other methods. Here you see the main devices, medical devices. I brought them with me. Here you see the basic device with the LCD screen and 11 modes. And we have these small chips which are emitting the radiation and can be placed on the skin of the human body. A smaller device, which is called Akato Mini, realize the same effect, but with less possibilities to choose different programs and different resonance frequencies. And at the very end, we have this activator with a cup for a bottle of water to activate water inside the body. I will speak tomorrow about what means activation of water and what means activation, what can be realized with the help of activated water. For domestic or for home use, the producer realized a variable you see below in the picture, a variable which can be used to improve the quality of life and to lower the physiological stress in the human body. In this picture, you see again the Akaton device with the LCD screen, and below you see some different colored oscillators. These oscillators, the yellow one is a broadband oscillator which emitted a noisy, white noisy spectrum of 43 to 78 gigahertz. It's a wavelength of 4.9 to 7.1 millimeters. White noisy spectrum means that in this range, all frequencies are emitted with the same intensity. So you are influencing parallel with all frequencies in this band range. The red oscillator has a single frequency, it's 43 gigahertz, wavelength 7.1 millimeters. Green is 53, 5.5 millimeters, and blue is 63, 4.9 millimeters. There is an infrared light emitter or oscillator in the range from 0.9 to 1 micrometers. This infrared oscillator has a very focused emitted radiation, and that's why it's used on the one hand side to acupuncture influence, and on the other hand it can be used parallel to the colored oscillators to increase the influence of these frequencies. How to use the apparatus you can see here. You can connect the oscillators with the device and put the oscillators on skin by hand, or you can use a plaster to connect it on the skin. To use these Akaton devices in treatment, you must choose a treatment strategy. Like in every case of treatment, you can decide what to use and how to use. And before starts the therapy, there are some general therapy rules. You must, if you try to use the device, you must have an exact anamnesis, an exact diagnosis. Because with this method, you can increase the activity of some processes or you can decrease them, depending how to use the device. And that's why to know what you should do, must know exact what is the state of the body, what is the diagnosis in the certain case. It's generally not possible or not advisable to use the device in the so-called decompensated states. Decompensated means that the organ system or the organ isn't able to realize the normal physiological function, and it's in an unstable situation. And if you influence with this radiation, with this EHF radiation, it can be moved to one side or to another side, in the good or in the bad, and that's why it's not possible or not advisable to use the device in decompensated states. All the general therapy rules included that you must realize the therapy in quiet environment and in a relaxed position. It's different from if you use, let's say, drugs or medicaments to the therapy. You can take them and then go ahead to work. But in this kind of therapy, you need some time and you need some environment and relaxation to have let's in success. If you during the treatments see acute symptoms like vomiting or dizziness, you should have a break, because the device activated some processes inside the body which can be forced and can go to the birth. Fatigue is a positive signal. Even some patients, if they are treated with a method, they started to sleep because the body is well balanced, and it's a positive signal that the influence to the biological system is very good. You can use, as I said already before, you can use the EHF devices in a monotherapy. That means only use the device to treat some problems, or you can use it in co-therapy with other methods or with medicaments, drugs. Tomorrow, Dr. Istomina will describe you some examples how you can use it in monotherapy and in co-therapy both. Some words about the background resonance radiation. The background resonance radiation is a very important effect of this kind of devices. It's the only device which can realize this effect on the market nowadays. And it means that, or it based on the memory effect of a gun diode, which is included in the oscillator in these small chips. The radiation, to realize the radiation, you need a radiation emitting elements, and in the device, these are crystals of gallium arsenide. Only these gallium arsenide crystals make it possible to realize the devices in such small amount or small dimensions. In up to the 70s or 80s last century, this radiation was realized by devices which has a dimension of a big fridge, and only the gallium arsenide technology makes it possible to realize in these small dimensions. In background resonance therapy, the gallium arsenide crystal creates a spectral analog of the EHF emission of the living cells, and later on is able to emit the spectrum with lower intensity back to the organism. What this means? We all know in this auditorium that living cells and living organisms, they are emitting electromagnetic radiation in different frequencies, starting with emitting light and ending with lower frequencies, and among them there are frequencies in the range of gigahertz. And the gallium arsenide crystal is able to write in the crystal these frequencies. It's written by metastable structures inside the crystal. It's called polaritone. And this metastable structures inside the gallium arsenide crystal existing even if the device is switched off. And later, these metastable structures are activated from outside by thermal fluctuations or by background space radiation. In the picture, this is described here with quant. And if the metastable structure is deconstructed, then they are emitted a radiation similar to the radiation written down before. So with the help of this technique, we have the possibilities to realize suppression of pathological or unstable physiological vibrations and the amplification of physiological stable vibrations. And we can recover the dynamic balance in the organism of the patient. These influence and these results are proved and described with evidence-based experiments on the medical field. That means there were tested different groups of, one group was a control group, like in every experiment, and then another group was treated with this background resonance radiation, and the third group get a placebo device not acting as the radiation device. If you prove such experiments, then you can find that the treated group had better results in healing and had better results in realizing therapy success during the experiment. The problem in many discussions is that it's proved in this medical way, but there is not full biophysical or biomedical description what is going on really in the cells and in the metastasis of the, in the metabolism of the human body. So it's in future must realize an additional research to prove what's really the biophysics or biochemistry of this background resonance radiation therapy. In other words, in other words, you can describe this effect in the case of information medicine. Information medicine is a new word for a field of medicine which is based not on intense physical or chemical influence, but is based on systemic healing by low energy exposure. Some people are speaking about quantum medicine too. That means small energy, small effects, even in some cases single quants realize a big process, a big systemic change in the human body. You understand, these are, up to now, these are only words which try to describe the situation, but there must be realized physical or biochemical experiments to prove all this hypothesis. But you know, it's, if you look at the surroundings in therapy, many people use, of course, these words like energy medicine, information medicine, or quantum medicine for good marketing their methods. And the physicists in some cases are very angry about using their words in this connection. As I said before, this unique technical position of ACATOM is widely used in therapy and given real advantage of these devices in practical use. The advantages are the tissue is not heated, there are no complications, no side effects known. They are very effective in inflammatory and infectious diseases. The practical doctors use the method that it's very good in therapy of acute diseases. It's much more difficult to therapy long-lasting chronic diseases with this method. Because if you have an active process, it's easier to influence the process. If you already have an established process which changes the whole system of the body, then it's much more difficult to change the whole system. Especially, it's well known in pain therapy. If you have a chronic pain, the medical doctors are speaking about the learned pain reaction, then to relearning, to reorganizing, it's much difficult than if you have acute pain and you want to treat this pain. There's no development of resistance because these are basic biological processes, and for the biological systems, including the bacteria and viruses, it's difficult to develop resistance against this basic influence, basic process. And it can be easily combined with other forms of treatment, especially in pain therapy. You can use it combined with medicaments, with drugs, and you can use lower doses of drugs if you have a supporting therapy with this Akaton. About contraindications. The first discussions I normally heard is that if there are no side effects, then there are no healing effects, because a healing without side effects is impossible. But you must have in mind that it's a special kind of influence which is influencing the basic metabolism processes on the electromagnetic levels. That means many of the internal processes are combined or have parallel electromagnetic effects. To describe this for a physician, it's very clear. Let's say normally, if you have in mind that some processes in the muscles or some processes in blood, they are realized with the help of ions going through the membrane of the cells. The natrium ions, the sodium ions, the calcium ions, and so on. But an ion moving through a membrane, it means that there is a very, very small amount of radiation, because every moving electron or every moving ion is emitting electromagnetic radiation. Of course, for a single ion, you can't measure it because it's too small. But if you have a lot of these processes inside the body and a lot of these movements of ions inside the body, you have a permanent emitting of internal electromagnetic radiation. And this, with the help of this Akaton, you influence these basic processes. As I said before, not all influences, all processes are really clear, but it's shown experimental that it supports the healing, supports the therapy. Now about the contraindications. Contraindications mostly connected not with the direct influence of this electromagnetic radiation, but mostly connected with facts that are outside this therapy process. One is acute infections of unknown etiology. If you don't know what's going on, what's really the basic reason of the infection, it's normally forbidden to decide how to therapy it. And that's why you shouldn't use it if you not have a clear information about infections. Of course, this method is a physiotherapeutical method which supports reorganization, local or systemic reorganization, but it can't be replace acute diseases which are requiring a surgery. That means you can support the healing of a wound or of a broken bone, but you can't move the bone if it's broken in a way that needs surgery with this therapy effect. Normally it's clear, but I say it to be clear what are the limited factors of the method. Another important thing is cachexia. What means cachexia? This means that the human body is very weak, have no energy resources, and are very close to absolute exhausting. In this case, you have no internal reserves to recreate the processes inside the body. And if you influence and start to influence the processes inside the biological systems, in the case of cachexia, you can't be sure what's the result. It's forcing the energy exhausting or recreating the energy reserves. And that's why it's a limited factor. Very experienced specialists can work even with cachexia patients with lower time, therapy time, with lower doses, but for the, let's say, starting user or non-experienced user, it's forbidden to use it in the case of strong cachexia. And I said before already, this is not advised to use it in unstable states. For instance, acute cardiovascular insufficiency, cardiopulmonary, or hepatic insufficiency, because these are unstable states, and again, you can start the processes in the direction of improving the situation or starts enforcing the destroyment of the internal processes. That's why you must be very careful in this cases. General sepsis and agony, it's all the same direction. If you are on the border of the energetic possibilities of the human body, you shouldn't use this method because you can't direct the results of the method. Pregnancy is a special case. Russian experienced therapist uses in pregnancy too, but according to the rules of the European Union, it's forbidden to use electromagnetic radiation in treatment of pregnant women, despite the fact that this is very, very low intensity radiation, but it's generally forbidden. In Russia, it's used by experienced therapeutes, but we must say here it's not helpful and not used. The same is people or patients with pacemakers, with heart diseases and pacemakers. It's the same problem. It's generally forbidden to use this electromagnetic radiations for people with pacemakers, despite the fact that normal, in our time, pacemakers are closed and this small intensity electromagnetic radiation can be influenced the pacemakers inside, but It's a decision of the law. In EHF therapy, we have in general 3 strategic fields. Therapy with projection zones of the organs, therapy according to the rules of acupuncture, or in other words, biological active points, and therapy of acute local symptoms. Therapy of the projection zones means there are different medical theories, that different organs or organic systems are projected or are connected with different zones of the skin of the human body. And that's why if you influence these points or these areas of the skin, you can influence the organ system. It's used in reflexotherapy, and it's used in different kinds of massage therapy, and you can use it if you develop a strategy of therapy or of healing with the Akatom device. The projection zones are, or the therapy on projection zones have some advantages. This mode is the easiest to use and is a good basis for the beginners, because these are quite big areas and you can't, and they are very easy to find, and so you can influence and with the help of this oscillators, these zones, and even you can have the oscillators on a longer time if you fix them with a medical plaster. You can choose these organs or organ systems with different table of modes or different tables of projection zones, which are widely published in the literature, and you can conduct a therapy session even if you simply leave the oscillators on the chosen zone. Then you started a direct EHF therapy, and later on a BRR therapy is carried on. For this therapy of projection zones, you should use the yellow oscillator. Here you see an example and picture which kind of organs are connected with different zones of the human body. This is a very simple one. Here's another one. Oh. Here's another one showing nearly the same areas of the human body and describing, you see the main organ system starting with lungs and ending with the urogenital organs, find their expression on the surface of the human body, and you can use these areas for the therapy modes. We normally use a more detailed picture, it's this one, which are in between the general projection zones and already closer to the acupuncture system. And here you find the areas which can be influenced with the therapy on these projection zones on the skin or on the surface of the human body. You see there's a widespread possibility to influence different systems inside the body. Let's have in mind, or let's remind me that not all biophysical and biochemical processes are clear. Why influencing these areas of the skin? You can influence the balance or the energy level of this internal systems of the human body. But again, we have a medical evidence-based proof that the therapy is working, that the therapy gives positive results, but not fully clear how it works in detail. I think in medicine, it's often we have such a situation, and I believe not for all drugs is really clear how they are working, but they show positive results in different diseases and in different therapy modes. Some examples how can be used the EHF therapy with the help of Akatom. Akatom have 11 different programs which you can choose. The first two programs are program 1, direct radiation therapy, direct radiation influence. And the other second program is to use for this BRR therapy. And in addition, we have 9 programs where the high frequency range, the gigahertz range, is modulated with lower frequencies in the range of several hertz. These lower frequencies are taken from the experience of the German Dr. Voll. Dr. Voll developed different or proved different frequencies of electric influence from about 3 hertz to about 20 hertz, which are able to influence the balance of different organ systems. In Germany, the Voll frequencies are mostly forgotten, but in Russia, they are widely used to give an additional effect in therapy. And here you have an example how it can be used. You see on the left-hand side 5, it means program number 5, which has the low frequency modulation for the heart and cardiovascular system. It works 10 minutes, and for different diagnoses, you should apply this program 5 minutes, 10 minutes program 5 to different areas of the skin. In the case of stenocardia, you must apply it on the area 11 in front. It's the area of the sternum. and immediately in this area you can reach the stenocardia syndrome of the heart. For ischemic problems, for instance, you can treat the area 13 in front and the area 2 behind. And so there is a long list of different diagnoses which you can treat with the ACATOM program in different modes of frequency modulation. Another example, the frequency for the respiratory apparatus is given in the program 6, the slow fall frequency, and you can directly work on a projection in the case of bronchitis to 1 in front and 15 in rear. And you see these other areas where directly are placed in the body the bronchi and the trachea.
There's a question.
Yeah. Not necessarily moving around. You can place it in this area because you must see it's a theory which says that all the area is having, how to say it in non-scientific words, having a direct channel to the organ system. And so moving around, it's more if you want to have a local influence on local therapy, but for this projects and zones therapy, it's enough to place the oscillator on one of these areas and then realize the program. It's possible to use both on the same time. We will speak about this later on. I'm now speaking about the general description and general positions. In practical use, there is a process of adaptation. That means if you use this therapy, the human body, the system is reacting and adapting to this influence. And if you use it too often and too much, then the adapting process is going on and the reaction, the therapy success is decreasing. You can compare it with sun. If you often go to the sun, you become a brown skin and the influence of the sun is less than at the very starting point. That means electromagnetic radiation creates big reaction if the body is not adapted, but if it's adapted, then the reaction is much less. That's why the practitioners in this therapy, they gave the rule that no more than 30 minutes per day and no more than 2 weeks therapy day by day. Then you must have a break, that the body stops this adaptation process and then it's sensitive to a new therapy after again 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But this is a field of Dr. Istomina. She's very experienced in this and can answer you tomorrow all the practical questions. Are some other questions up to now?
There were questions in the chat. Are there any evidence-based studies for the electron that have been run or otherwise curated for treatment protocols?
let's say, evidence-based publications, you must have in mind that's the general criteria for evidence-based medicine nowadays are the so-called Oxford criteria. That means it must be randomized study. The groups must be chosen according to several rules and so on. And this evidence-based criteria, they are existing about, I don't know, really about 10 years. That means all publications before can't be following these rules. But in the last 10 years, there are some publications which are following these rules and which give results that the method in general and hackathon in special have a positive therapeutic effect. In general, the bibliography of the EHF radiation use in medicine has about 3,000, more than 3,000 publications. 90% of them are Russian. And in the last days or last time, there are a lot of publications in China. Chinese scientists are very interested in this field because of the connection to acupuncture. And in the United States, because some Russian scientists which are which were going to the United States in the 90s, developed some groups in the United States. The main name in this connection is Ciskin in Palo Alto. He has a laboratory in this EHF radiation research.
Is there a GitHub operation manual in Chinese?
No, we haven't a Chinese manual. I know that Mr. Koshimyakin is working with Chinese partners to get an allowance to sell the device in China. It's a really difficult registration procedure, and only after this we will start, or he will start, the translation into Chinese.
Okay, thank you. The last question in the chat. Can data be used to remove blocked energy in organs due to emotional trauma during one site?
Yeah, there are some publications which are using the hackathon in treatment of psychological or nerve problems. It was used for treatment of drug abuse, for alcohol abuse, for depressions, but mostly, as far as I followed the literature, to compensate or to decrease the physiological side effects, not the basic problem of, let's say, drug abuse, but if you don't use drug anymore, you have a lot of physiological side effects and you can support them. Or in depression, you have some physiological side effects like fatigue, or and in this case is used hackathon as a supporting method, not as a single method, but as a supporting method. There are, especially in alcohol abuse, there are a lot of work in Russia, because alcohol abuse is a big problem there, as you may know. And of course, they are looking for all possible methods to help the people which are depending on alcohol. I couldn't understand what. Yeah, in Russia, yes, it's, let's say, in the polyclinics or in the hospitals, not only the physical doctors, but the supporting personnel is used the method too, and it's you must say in Russia we have a different system comparing with Europe. In Europe, the therapy rules are described or are defined by the scientific societies. For instance, how to treat a heart disease, it's defined by the American and the European Coronary Society. In Russia, they have another system. In Russia, you must apply to the Ministry of Health to be approved as an official medical method. And they have a scientific council which decides whether your method could be used in the official, let's say, medical organizations or not. And in Russia, for about 30 types of diagnosis, existing such exist such rules how to use the EHF therapy in medicine, in medical organizations. Of course, there is not written that Akatom is used, but in general, the method is used. It depends in which country. It's the first. The second, what do you mean? Can everyone? Let's say in Germany, you can go and buy a medical device, let's say an EKG, and use it for patients. What's forbidden? To give them a diagnosis, because it's only for physicians, and to treat them. But to measure, it's allowed. And so you can buy the device, but if you want to treat a person as a medical doctor, you must have the allowance according to the rules of the states where you live in. For your personal use, it's your own decision, of course. So it depends on the law in different countries, but in general, let's say there is no basic reason to not to use the device, because there are no side effects which can damage the person. I described where it's difficult to use or where it's better not to use the method. The only thing which can happen there is a small group of persons which are not sensitive enough to this radiation, and then the therapeutic effect will be very low or not at all be realized. It's the only thing you can, which could happen. It's one of the major fields of application. Later on I show you a picture as an example how to. We spoke about three fields. We are now projection zones at the inner organs. But local application, it's very successful too, and you will see it. The limitations are the same for older young people. If you have a very unstable situation, then it's not recommended to use, but normally there's no limitation depending on age. Let's see further, and some of your questions will be answered. Therapy according to the rules of acupuncture. This is a little bit more difficult because the method demands some special skills, how to find the sensitive point. And to learn this, it's helpful to consult a specialist and to learn how different points of acupuncture can influence the illness of an organ or of an organ system. To work in the rules of acupuncture, there's especially created the program 11. In the description of the device, it's called biological active points, but it means the same like acupuncture points. Here you can use the more than the mode 1 or program 1, 2, but the program 11, as I told, is especially designed for this case. To start a general therapy with ACATOM, it's helpful, or I said before, it's helpful to have a relaxed and quiet position. And according to the acupuncture, you can support this development of such a situation. This is so-called anti-stress techniques. It's a method of therapy or starting therapy which provides sedative, antidepressant and analgesic effects. If you measure this during this treatment, you can see the treatment of this point is balancing the autonomous nervous system. Normally in stress situation, you have a prevalence and activation of the sympathicus part of the autonomous nervous system. And if you are influencing this point, you are balancing the autonomous nervous system, and the parasympathicus is increasing and the sympathicus is decreasing. Where is this magic point? It's a PC6, pericard meridian point 6. In the transcription from Chinese, it's called Neguan. It's on 3 fingers from the wrist fold in the middle of the lower part of the arm. You can find this point. You can put there an oscillator and run program 1, and then you have this balancing function to the autonomous nervous system, and the whole body, the whole system is more sensitive to further treatment. The same meridian or the same effect you can, not the same meridian, but the same effect you can reach if you treat the LE4 Hegu. It's a large intestine meridian, and this point is balancing to you can find it very easily if you take your fingertip and press here. You find the point where it's painful. And this is the right point, Egu. Yeah, if you are a little bit away, it's not painful, and one point is painful. And this is a Egu point. Both are used in therapy sessions to start the therapy session and to bring the patient in a more quiet and balanced situation. In, let's say, daily life or domestic applications, this hand wrist, I show you this hand wrist band, it's in fact influencing the same areas and the same points to give you a balance in the autonomous nervous system. But this, by these acupuncture points, it's a real medical therapeutic start. I give you an example for how to therapy with ischemic coronary heart disease with acupuncture. Ischemic coronary heart disease mainly are accompanied with or associated with pain, with chest pain in stressful situation, or if you have special physical activities. You can, in some cases, have rhythm disturbances or even interruptions in the work of the heart, and different side effects like swelling the tissues of the leg. The pain is especially forced by a sitting position. Here you see a picture with different points important for treatment, different acupuncture points. In the coronary heart disease, we treat the points HT9 and HT7. HT7 and HT9s are both points of the heart meridian which influence the activity of the heart. And HT9 you can find on your small finger inside here. And HT7, it's in the middle of your fold of the hand wrist. It's not shown here, I think. Both are used to lower the symptoms of the ischemic heart disease, coronary heart disease. Coronary heart disease, it's a good example to describe the basic, let's say, the basic problems of the therapy. The reasons of the coronary heart disease is that the volume of the coronary heart vessels are low or very small. So the blood flow is limited and the oxygen supply of the heart is low. And if it's break at all, then you have this infarct. With the help of this ACATOM device, you can have two effects. You can lower the volume, you can increase the volume of the heart vessels, and you can improve the blood flow, the blood biology. But you can't take away these plugs limiting the volumes of the vessels, because the reasons for these plugs are in the basic metabolism of the of the wall of the heart vessels. So you can limit the negative follow-up, you can improve the oxygen situation of the heart, but you can't heal the basic reason of the heart problems with this Akaton. It's a typical case how Akaton can be used in a combined therapy with other methods improving the situation in the heart vessels. You have less pain, you have less breakdowns of the blood flow, you have improved oxygen supply, but you don't have a better situations with the plugs inside the vessels. Let's say there are some new theories in former times. They thought that the plugs is created by the so-called bad fat amount in the blood. It's not real reason. The last research, American scientists found out that the reason are the so-called microinflammations in the wall of the blood vessels, and because these small vessels in the heart are very sensitive, they are creating a lot of these plugs. And this means the plugs are not the reason, but the follow-up of a process in the body. And the main reason for microinflammations is the level of insulin in the blood. That means diabetes patients are especially sensitive for heart problems. Another magic point is a so-called, here's written E36. It's, I can give you another explanation for problems in this therapy. In acupuncture literature, there are existing 3 systems of describing the points. There's a French system, there's an English system, and there's a German system. And this point is part of the so-called stomach meridian. That's why in English it's called ST. The Russian literature uses the French system, and in French system it's called E36. So in English it should be ST36. That's why I gave already the Chinese transcription, because they are similar for all the 3 systems. In German it's M36. From stomach, German Magen. This point is very helpful because it's a general influencing point to the blood system, and that's why it's not only lowers the blood pressure and eliminates the angina pectoris, the heart problems, but it's very helpful in decreasing many kinds of pain depending with blood supply or with high blood pressure, especially different kinds of pains in the head and shoulder area. So it's far away from this, but during the blood systems, this have a lot of influence. It's a very often used by Dr. Istomila. You can ask her tomorrow. It's her most loved point. Я говорю по вашему любимому точку. It's just. I think it's, in general, it's clear for different diagnoses, you must have different kinds of treatments. More details can be asked tomorrow. Mostly is used the program 1 or the program 11, and in some fixed frequencies, you can then the oscillator leave on the place, and you will parallel realize this BRR therapy. The last point is therapy of acute symptoms. This therapy strategy is generally different from both the others, because both the others are therapeutic strategies to influence the body system, to reach systemic results in organs or organic systems. In the acute symptom therapy, we want to reach local effects. Local effects, pain in muscles, bones, connective tissue. In this case, the therapy is directed directly to the most painful areas or points. If you have muscle problems or problems with the spinal cord, you often can find the so-called trigger points. These are small hardening points which are especially very painful. And these points are the points of therapy. The therapy should apply to these points. Local inflammation. Here we mean the inflammation in skin or directly under the skin. Here you can influence the inflammation process, the effect standing behind the inflammation therapy and inflammation results is improvement of the microcirculation and microtransporting process. So if you apply the oscillator to the skin, you have an improved microcirculations in the small blood vessels of the skin, and you have improved movements in the lymphatic surroundings of the cells. And so you have a better transport of immune cells to the inflammation area, and a better transport of metabolic results and products from the area to the responding organs. This corresponds to the next point, microcirculation. Microcirculation gives not only an improvement with inflammation, but microcirculation is a basic reason or basic factor to have a good wound healing. And especially in difficult areas where the microcirculation in general is low, or if you have special cases, let's say for diabetes patients, the microcirculation in the legs is often damaged, and so you can improve the microcirculation with the help of direct influence of the skin with this Akatom device.
Varicose veins.
Yeah, it's one of the cases I described already before. You can't improve the general situation if the veins are damaged. You can't recover them with the help of the Akatom. But you can, there are some special follow-ups of these damaged veins, and one is the so-called open legs. That means areas where the skin is damaged and the lymph is coming out. And this situation, this local situation, you can improve with the help of Akatom very good. Istomia have a lot of photos. She can show it tomorrow how this damaged area, especially inside the leg, here in the inside area, you can have good results to recover the skin and to close these areas. Let's say the other question often in this case is if you have a wound healing with necrosis. Normally the surgery or the surgeons, they in this case take away the whole tissue, then the wound is healing on a very big scar, and in some cases even with deeper areas in the skin, and with the help of Akatom you can support wound healing, you can improve or avoid necrosis. It of course takes a longer time because you must improve the situation of microcirculation. I'll show you now some examples in detail. Inflammation. In most cases of where the therapy is used is skin and subcutaneous tissue, as I said before, the musculoskeletal system, especially the spine, and the urogenital systems, of course, wounds and burns, and after surgery to have better results in post-operative scar development and post-operative rehabilitation. An example of local inflammation. This was a local inflammation after application of a medical reflexotherapy clips. These are metallic clips which are given to the ear, and they are staying there several days. And after this, the clip was removed and there was an inflammation. In this time was treated the area with program 2, BRR, 2 times per day. The oscillator, after running the program 2 1 minute, was left 30 minutes on the place. And at the first day in the evening, you see in the third picture already remarkable results. And the later pictures, I don't know, it's seen in the internet. The later pictures, these are the next day, in the morning and in the evening. You see the direct inflammation process is stopped nearly immediately. And on the third day, it's already hard to find the place where it's going on. And the fourth day is a full remission of the inflammation. That means you can, if an inflammation process is going on in an acute way, you can have good results and stop the process even in one day. It helps very good. It's my own experience. It helps very good with insect bites too. I have normally a strong reaction to bee problems, and it helps me immediately if I put the oscillator on the place and run the program too. Then it's not painful and not swelling in the area. So it's a acute medical help in insect bites too. Very good results you can find for hematomes. In hematome, it's the same reason. The hematome must be mobilized to be taken away with blood flow or lymph flow. And if you put the oscillator on a hematome, you can see that it nearly immediately starts to decrease. We have here seen the hematome and running the program too, and then the projection, then 20 to 30 minutes on the hand. And there's a picture missing. If you take after 20, 30 minutes the oscillator away, you can see in the hematome a white round area where the oscillator was placed and the hematome was already taken away, where in the surroundings remaining the Another more serious examples is a hematome after fracture of foot bones. The fracture was directed and then fixed with a gypsum latentum and orthosis, but parallel there is a big hematome in the area, and so when temporarily removed the orthosis, the EHF therapy was used to support or to force resorption of the hematoma. And you can see before complex therapy, that means before orthosis and EHF, and after 5 procedures, that means after 5 days, the hematomes are already fully removed. The dangerous case in this area is that if you have a stable hematoma in this leg, it can be fixed and stable, be in the joint, and then you have big problems to go without pain, and so it's very helpful if you can very fast take away this hematoma. This is a measurement which show you the improvement of the blood circulation, not only the local microcirculation, but you can apply the EHF to the big vessels in the arm or here in the shoulder, and so you reach in results that the connection between the erythrocytes is lowered and you have a more free movement of the erythrocytes and the better supply of oxygen. Some therapists are using this even for diagnostic purposes, but we try to show and demonstrate how the method can influence. On the left-hand side, you see the so-called kind staples of erythrocytes, and on the right-hand side, you see free erythrocytes. Here you have an example how EHF therapy can support wound healing. This is an example for a wound. It's a dog bite, and of course the wound is infected and necrotic. In normal case, with surgery, you would take all this tissue away and leaving a very deep hollow in this place. But here it was treated with EHF, improved microcirculation and healing. Of course, as you see below, it takes a much longer time, but in the sense of function of the arm and in the sense of cosmetic view, it's better to heal. At the very beginning, I told you that we use not only these yellow oscillators with a broadband wide noise, but we have oscillators with fixed wavelengths, and you can here see that in some cases it's helpful not only to use the yellow oscillators, but to use the fixed frequencies too. We have here a list of fixed frequencies and when it makes sense to apply them. Among this, there are a lot of very difficult and very strong diagnoses, which are very problematic for the patients. If you see neurodermitis or psoriasis, these are problems which are very, not only physiological problematic for the people, but a high level of psychological limitation of the daily life, because the patients are normally, they isolate themselves from the daily life because of their skin problems. A very important process you see here, it's immune stimulation. It's immune stimulation, you can use the 4.9 wavelengths, or you can use the yellow 2 if you have not this 4.9 available. Immune stimulation means that you put the oscillator in the middle of the sternum and run the program 1, and the sternum is one of the bones where producing blood cells up to the end of the life. The long bones producing blood cells only by children, but the sternum is producing blood cells all the time. And if you apply the oscillators to the sternum, you are activating the production of blood cells, and with this you are activating the immune system. You can use this activating process in many general therapy strategies to support the general strategy success, but you must have in mind that not in all cases it's helpful. For instance, if you have a patient has the skin problems and the patient have autoimmune diseases, it's not helpful to activate the immune system. So you must have in mind that in some cases it's even helpful not to activate or to decrease the immune system. But this can be in detail discussed with Dr. Istomina tomorrow. An example that Akatom is used in veterinary medicine too. I'm not very familiar with veterinary medicine applications, so I can show you only this picture that you are used. I know that Alexander Kozhimyakin told me that they sold a certain amount of devices to Saudi Arabia because they want to try their camels with this to improve the homeostasis of their competition camels with the help of Akatom. So it's electromagnetic doping. Here you have the bracelet Akatom Air. I told you that this is a non-medical application to improve the general balance of the body, mainly influencing the big blood vessels inside the hand wrist and influencing the acupuncture point in the hand wrist fold. The latest development in this area is the so-called MyStone. MyStone fulfills the same function like Akatom Mini. It can be realized the program 1 and 2, and it's directed or controlled by a smartphone app. That means all the functions are included in the small chip, and the controlling function is realized with an app in the smartphone. This device is directed to the beauty market. It's not a non-medical device. Of course, if it has the same functions, you can use it as a medical device too, but approved it's only for beauty. We have 6 programs. We have skin beauty, both skin care and skin relaxation. And then we have 3 programs, Pimple X, Anti-Stress, and Immune Pro. The first group of programs is in the word of beauty, provide and visible, useful appearance. What in the scientific background means that you have an improved microcirculation in the area. The blood can realize a better supply of the skin and the subcutaneous tissue, and the extracellular structures are stabilized, and so you have a better view of the skin, and you have a better supply with nutritions, and so the development of I have to say, you have a better view, let's say that. You can, it's the next effect, you can suppress local inflammations, and local inflammations you have after the epilation, after shaving, after tattoo or permanent makeup. And so the medical effects, then you can suppress local inflammation, can be used in the beauty area too. We, of course, in the beauty marketing, we don't use the medical words and the medical descriptions. That's why it's another word, and that's why we need another kind of communication. But to describe what's going on, it's, in fact, it's inflammation suppressor. We tried to avoid the description of modes and procedures. We only say, put it on a place and run skin relaxation, and your skin will be relaxed. Yeah. So it's more, mode 2 you can find here. Pimple X, it's in fact, again, local inflammation, but now with BRR. That's why it runs 40 minutes. We don't say run 1 minute and wait 40 minutes. We say the program runs 40 minutes without opening the internal procedure. Anti-stress, it's the same. Oh, anti-stress, it's the same. Put it on your arm. And Immune Pro, put it on your sternum. The advantage is that it's small. You can put it in your hand pockets. You see here, you have such a small, and we give you an additional gel, which is in connection with the milestone, an additional nutrition effect, which is very fast included in the skin with the support of this arcaton. So this is the main information I tried to give you today about the general principles of the EHF therapy. If you have some questions in more detailed and more relating to different diagnoses, we will give you information tomorrow and try to show how to work with the devices in different cases.
Okay, we can have a coffee break now. Continue after that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zenke. So we did do a lot of work, so maybe we can start with the ring during the next part of the meeting.
But I didn't bring the new presentation. Then you must use the presentation we already gave.
Yes, we can use the old ones. We'll find them now.
Okay, I have them here, but I started.
Как-нибудь так?
Добрый день.
Hello, everybody.
Продолжим тему транслятора.
Today we'll continue to speak about the translators.
Хотелось бы сначала коснуться того места, где мы находимся.
But I would like to say a word about the place where we are located now.
Видите, какая замечательная здесь архитектура.
You can see that there is beautiful architecture here.
Это знаменательное место связано с Мальтийским орденом.
This is a very significant place which is related to the military order of Malta.
Этот орден почти 1000 лет назад был создан.
This military order was created almost 1000 years ago
И до сих пор продолжает существовать.
and it still keeps existing.
Он был создан для того, чтобы показывать помощь паломникам, которые идут на восток для поклонения в Иерусалим, для поклонения христианским ценностям.
It was created in order to help the religious people who go to Jerusalem to worship the Christian saint places.
Потом она была расширена вообще на помощь всем нуждающимся, которым можно оказать какую-то помощь.
But then it was developed just as an organization which could help everybody who needed help.
И вот этот конгресс, посвященный Human Rights System, я думаю, что он как раз совпадает с той тематикой, которой занимается орден Мальтийский.
So our Congress, which is dedicated to the human rights system, actually has the same topics as those embraced by the Maltese military order.
Потому что одна из задач, которую ставят организаторы конгресса, и в том числе, это помощь людям.
Because one of the main tasks set by the organizers of this Congress, including us, is providing help to everybody.
Каждый, кто здесь выступал на этом конгрессе, они помогают по-своему.
Each of the people who conducted presentations and lectures during this Congress are helping people in their own way.
Ну вот наши трансляторы – это тема, тема помощи, которая несколько выходит за привычные рамки обычных парадигм.
Our translators is a method of help which goes beyond usual paradigms.
Мы уже немного говорили об этом на первый день.
We already spoke about this on the first day of the Congress.
И упоминали, что есть результаты исследований, показывающих, что эти устройства эффективны в самых разных областях.
And we have already mentioned that there is a lot of research which proved that these devices can be helpful in absolutely different areas.
Ну и вот хотелось бы как раз познакомить вас с результатами некоторых исследований.
And now I would like to introduce to you the results of some research.
Вот одно из первых исследований, которое было сделано трансляторами, оно было сделано в городе Якутске, в России. Исследовались характеристики лейкоцитов и как на них влияет как раз транслятор.
One of these researches was carried out in the Russian city Yakutsk, and the goal of the research was to find out how the translators influence the qualities of the leukocytes, the white blood cells. This research was carried out with the translator Super.
Которое тогда мы называли просто транслятор.
At that time, we called it just translator.
Это был один из первых вариантов наших трансляторов.
It was one of the first versions of our translators technologies.
Как проводился эксперимент?
How was this research carried out?
У людей брали пробу крови, пробирочку.
Blood samples of different people were taken.
И характеристики лейкоцитов измерялись.
And then we measured the characteristics of their leukocytes.
Всего измерялось 10 параметров лейкоцитов. Вот эта табличка, в которой есть параметры лейкоцитов. Ну, здесь немного по-русски написано.
In general, we measured 10 different parameters of the leukocytes. Here it's written in Russian, but these are different medical characteristics.
Некоторые характеристики это биохимические характеристики лейкоцитов, вот первые 5.
Some of the characteristics are biochemical characteristics of the leukocytes. The first 5 ones are biochemical.
Последние это так называемые геномные характеристики лейкоцитов.
And a few last ones are genome characteristics of the leukocytes.
Вторая колонка это норма то, что должно быть.
The second column represents the normal level, the numbers which should be for the healthy person.
Следующая колонка – это исходное состояние, то, что было до начала экспериментов, какие характеристики лейкоцитов были сняты.
The third column represents the initial condition of the blood cells before the experiment.
Это так называемая группа 1.
This is the so-called group 1.
Все было две группы экспериментов с разными людьми.
In total, we had two groups which participated in the experiment, and different people were in these two groups.
Затем вот эта проба крови ставилась на вот это устройство.
Then this blood sample was put on this device.
Предварительно она обрабатывалась гепарином, чтобы не свертывалась кровь.
Beforehand, we put some gepарин into it so that the blood stays liquid.
И потом на 2 суток эта пробирочка ставилась на транслятор.
And then we put that the tube with the blood sample for 2 nights and 2 days on the translator super.
Вообще, конечно, руководитель, который поставил эти эксперименты, совершенно неожиданный подход к этим экспериментам у него был.
The person who was at the head of this experiment has a very special approach to the experiment.
Это член-корреспондент Гершенкольц, который в это время работал в Якутске.
It was a member of the Academy of Sciences. His name was Pershengol. At the time, he worked in Yakutsk.
Он там в 2 институтах провел такие исследования.
He carried out similar experiments in 2 institutes.
То есть по логике вещей, если кровь простояла 2 суток, она может только стать хуже.
According to the normal logic, if the blood has stayed somewhere for 2 days and 2 nights, it should get worse. Its quality should decrease.
Тем не менее, он такой эксперимент поставил и увидел, что кровь не только не стала хуже, она стала лучше.
But after this experiment, he found out that the blood didn't only not deteriorate, but vice versa, its quality increased.
Причем эффект, который проявился, мы его называем эффект нормализации.
Moreover, the effect which was seen after the contact with the translator is the so-called effect of normalization.
То есть он проявляется в следующем.
And its manifestation is the following.
Если параметры какие-то в системе ниже нормы, то они увеличиваются.
If some parameters in the system were initially under the normal level, they increase.
Если параметры выше нормы, то они уменьшаются.
And if these parameters were over the normal level, they decrease.
Ну и вот в этой таблице этот эффект очень хорошо проявился.
And here in this table, you can see that this effect was demonstrated very obviously during this experiment.
Ну вот посмотрим, например, на 9-й параметр, самый нижний, коэффициент устойчивости генома.
For example, look at this 9th parameter, and it is the coefficient of stability of the genome.
Мы видим, что для группы 1 этот параметр уменьшился. Он был больше нормы, 1, 3, 4, стал меньше нормы. Стал, ну, в смысле, вошел в норму, стал, то есть он уменьшился.
You can see that for the first group of people, this parameter has decreased. Before the experiment, it was higher than the normal level, and after the end of the experiment, it was around the normal level.
Для второй группы экспериментов этот параметр был ниже нормы почти в 5 раз.
For the second group of the experiment, the initial condition of this parameter was almost 5 times higher than the normal level.
Этот параметр стал нормой. Посмотрим вот в последней колоночке, видим, что он стал единичкой, так же, какой в норме он должен быть.
And after the end of the experiment, this parameter reached the normal level, as you can see in this last column.
Ну и вот если по всем строчкам пройти таблицы, мы видим эффект, что он проявляется.
And if you look at all lines of this table, you can see that this effect is manifest in all cases.
То есть вот если взять, например, строчку вот эту мышкой показывая,
Yes.
Первый параметр.
So the first parameter, you can see it here.
Вот здесь он был в 10 раз меньше нормы.
It was almost 10 times lower than the normal level for this group.
В норме он должен быть единицей.
It should be 1, according to the norm.
А вот здесь он 0,1.
But it was 0.1
Он стал почти
initially.
нормой, то есть 0,98.
And finally, it almost reached the normal level. It's 0.98.
Здесь эффект проявляется не абсолютный, а относительный.
Here we're speaking not about the absolute, but about the relative effect.
То есть чем дальше от нормы, тем ярче эффект проявляется.
The further the initial numbers are from the norm, the more obvious the effect is.
Потому что там, где близко к норме, например, было, да, там почти ничего не поменялось.
Because in cases where the initial parameter was very close to the normal level, the changes are not so significant.
Ну вот, например, параметр 6.
For example, look at this sixth
То есть
parameter.
он немного отличается от нормы. И он стал тоже нормой.
Initially it was quite close to the normal level, and then it reached the normal level.
Здесь небольшое изменение.
But here you can see a small change of the parameter. Сказать какие?
Ну, на экране у людей видно всех. Здесь не видно. Не видно? Кому не видно? А?
А может быть развернуть его, будет лучше видно? Не надо? Не надо? Увеличить? Как тут увеличивать? Так можно? Так? Нет, тут не альт? А, здесь. Тогда двигать вот здесь вот придется внизу. Ну да, но именно далековато.
Вот проявление эффекта нормализации говорит о том, что этими устройствами невозможно сделать вред человеку.
The manifestation of the normalization effect proves that it is impossible to harm a person with these devices.
Потому что все параметры, они двигаются к норме.
Because all parameters are moving towards the normal level.
Поэтому навредить данному устройству просто невозможно.
That's why it is impossible to do harm using this device.
Но проявление вот характеристик этих устройств, оно в разных системах может быть разным.
But the manifestation of the characteristics of these devices can be different in different situations.
Ну, давайте вот мы посмотрим еще раз на такую вот табличку. Это вот исследование, которое нам делали на ДНК.
For example, this is a research which was carried out with the DNA.
Шапку бы убрать было.
Тогда нужно развернуть. Можно ее убрать, эту шапку? Эту шапку убрать можно? Чтобы вот это исчезло нельзя? Как-нибудь?
Надо остановить.
Сейчас будет видно, да, все, что у вас будет. Угу. Угу. Открывается.
Есть такой метод исследования ДНК, называется ПЦР-анализ.
Как?
ПЦР.
There is a special method of studying, of carrying out research with the DNA, which is called PCR analysis. I'm not sure about the English abbreviation.
Этот анализ, он многостадийный. То есть надо сначала получить ДНК, потом выделить, вырастить. Ну, там много разных стадий.
This analysis has a lot of different stages. Что первое?
Сначала надо его вырастить, выделить, потом подготовить пробы.
Yes, you need to grow up this DNA first, then you should take a sample of it and prepare these samples.
И на каждом этапе действуют какие-то помехи, которые могут привести к тому, что анализ может не получиться.
And on each stage of the experiment, some distortions might prevent this experiment from success.
В одной из лабораторий биохимической нам делали анализы с применением наших трансляторов.
In one biochemical laboratory, an analysis was carried out with using our translators technologies.
Оказалось, что точность эксперимента существенно выросла.
And it turned out that the precision of the experiment increased significantly after using these devices.
В ряде случаев у них не получались анализ проб ДНК.
There were cases when they failed to do the analysis of the DNA samples.
Когда они начали пробовать применять наши структуры, то у них начали анализы получаться.
And once they started to use our structures, their analysis began to be successful.
Ну вот здесь сейчас на экране выведено показания приборов, одного из приборов, который участвовал в этом анализе.
Here on the screen you can see the results received during one of these experiments when, когда были использованы, translators были использованы.
Нет, это исходное.
It was
Состояние прибора.
It is the initial condition of the device without using the translators.
Проба ДНК туда вставлена в этот прибор,
A,
но прибор ничего не показывает.
a DNA sample was inserted into the device, but the device doesn't show anything.
Потом применили с той же самой пробой ДНК, с тем же прибором наше устройство транслятора.
And afterwards, the same DNA sample was being used, the same device was being used, but the translator's device was added into contact with.
Здесь мы видим, да, что у нас появилось множество каких-то характеристик, которые теперь уже можно изучать.
Here you already see a number of the DNA characteristics which now can be studied.
Это стадия, которая называется электрофорез.
This stage is called electrophoresis of the DNA.
Вот уже сам ПЦР-анализ. Вот исходное состояние
This
системы.
is the initial condition of the system.
Ну, мы видим, что очень бледные вот эти вот черточки, которые внизу, по ним очень сложно что-то говорить.
You can see that these lines, these lower lines are not very bright, so it is quite difficult to say anything.
Это без применения транслятора.
This is the experiment without using the translator.
И вот та же самая проба DNA с применением транслятора.
And here is the same DNA sample with using the translator's device.
Мы видим, что существенно сигнал увеличился у прибора.
So you can see that the signal of the device has increased significantly. Yes, there's a question in the audience. Вопрос есть. Vincent? Yes, sure.
Understand that. So it's an electrophoresis where you dilute the probe, DNA, you dilute it, you make an electrophoresis. Then you dilute again, you make an electrophoresis, right? And you do it several times. And the translator you put on the back of the gel electrophoresis, where do you put the translator?
Куда кладется транслайтер при электрофорезе? Where is the translator put during this process of electrophoresis? Как, куда? So the question is, where is the translator put during the process of electrophoresis, right?
Значит, хороший вопрос, потому что действительно, как применять вот в этом случае транслятор?
It is a good question because it is interesting how the translators should be used in such a case.
Дело в том, что трансляторы, у них, когда человек использует, есть определенная зона трансляции качества.
The thing is that that when the translators are used, there's a particular area of their influence, of the transmission of their qualities.
Порядка метра или полтора.
It is about 1 or 1.5 meters.
И в данном случае эти трансляторы были только у того человека, который делал анализ.
And in this case, only the person who carried out the analysis had these devices.
Но она зато четко отметила, что когда она делает без трансляторов, у нее анализы плохо получаются, когда она делает с трансляторами, у нее анализы идут хорошо.
But she noted that it was very obvious that when she was carrying out the experiments without the translators, the results were not good. But when she was doing it with the translators, the results were good. То есть она на теле держала у себя где-то, не ставилась, там, не под пробирку. No, so we didn't put the translator under the test tube. She put it just into her pocket. She held it near her body.
Я думаю, что если бы она положила под провод ДНК, то тоже результат был бы не хуже.
But I assume that if she puts the translator under the test tube, the result would be also good.
Это как раз вот исследование, которое показывает, что когда человек начинает пользоваться трансляторами, вот качество световые его характеристики начинают влиять на мир вокруг него.
This is a case which demonstrates that when a person is using the translator, his qualities, his light qualities, light characteristics begin to influence the world around him.
Ну вот у нас многие пользователи говорят, что когда они начинают пользоваться нашими трансляторами, не только они становятся более спокойными и уравновешенными, но даже окружающие люди тоже становятся спокойными и уравновешенными.
Many users of the translators notice that not after beginning to use the translators, not only they become calmer and more balanced, but people around them also become calmer and more balanced.
Ну вот еще здесь один результат, который можно было бы вот о чем сказать. Я сейчас у нас она разные трансляторы использует.
This scientist used different kinds of translators.
И вот, например, но когда она, например, использовала транслятор с благом, да, то есть видно было, что улучшился результат, но не очень.
When she used the translators Blaga, the result was also better, but it didn't improve as significantly as in case of the translator Super.
Дело в том, что мы говорим, что эти структуры отличаются по характеристикам.
The thing is that these structures have different characteristics.
Транслятор Супер — это работа в оперативном режиме времени.
The translator Super works with the operative time
То
scale,
есть масштаб времени
so
небольшой.
the time scale is not so high.
Транслятор Блага — это большие промежутки времени, структуры, которые имеют очень большие масштабы.
And the translator's Blaga is a structure which has long time scales, very long.
Поэтому проявленность этой структуры, но она не столь, ее сложнее увидеть.
That's why it's more difficult to see the manifestation of this structure.
То есть это надо было бы долго ждать, как бы, чтобы проявился этот результат.
It would be necessary to wait for a long time in order to see the result.
Но зато вот те результаты, которые мы получаем в транслятор Блага, они недоступны, например, при использовании транслятора Супер.
But, for example, the results which can be reached with using the translator's Blaga are impossible to reach with by using the translator Super.
Но есть и другие системы, на которых достаточно проявлены эти результаты, которые мы можем наблюдать.
But there are also other systems which enable us to manifest these qualities which we can contemplate.
Ну, например, то, что мы показывали вот с кристалликами воды.
For example, it is the case with the water crystals.
То есть вода меняет свои характеристики, и это видно при заморозке этой воды.
The water changes its characteristics after using the translators, and you can see it when the water crystals are frozen.
То есть мы видели, что кристаллики байкальской воды, которые мы взяли в качестве исходной системы,
You can see that the crystals of the Baikal water, which was taken by us as an initial system,
это вот исходная картинка, которую мы сейчас на экране видим.
here is the initial picture, which we can see right now on the screen.
Это тоже вот эксперимент, который проводился в транслятор Супер.
This experiment was also carried out with the translator Super.
То есть в байкальской воде очень хорошие исходные кристаллы, поэтому мы на ней очень хорошо увидели эффект нормализации, или эффект увеличения мерности.
The Baikal water has a very good quality. That's why it is very obvious that this effect of growing the new dimensions is very obvious in case of this water.
Значит, посмотрим, какие стали кристаллы.
So let's see the crystals after contact with the translator Super.
Здесь мы видим изменение какого качества?
Here, what is the quality? What is the characteristics of the change in this case?
Мы видим, что здесь поменялась сложность кристалла.
We can see that the crystals have become more complex.
Кристалл стал более сложным, значит, человек с таким жидким кристаллом в состоянии воспринимать более сложную информацию.
The crystal has become more complex, which means that a person who has such a liquid crystal in them can perceive more complicated information.
Как делали эксперимент?
How was this experiment carried out?
Берется емкость байкальской воды.
We took some vessel with the Baikal water.
Одна, да? Вернее, их две берется.
We took two vessels.
Одна делается эксперимент с ней с исходной водой.
With one of them was used to carry out the experiment with the initial water.
А под вторую подкладывается транслайтер.
And under the second one, we put the translator super.
Ну и где-то там около часа выдерживалось.
And we kept it there for about an hour.
И потом делался второй эксперимент с заморозкой воды.
After that, the second experiment with freezing the water was carried out.
Здесь мы видим, что появляется дополнительная ось кристаллизации.
Here you can see that additional axis of crystallization are appearing.
Не шестилучевые, здесь больше лучей появилось.
So here we have more than 6 rays.
Это как раз и говорит, что кристалл стал более сложным.
Here you can see that the crystal has become more complicated, more complex.
И это очень важно для человека, потому что человек способен тогда воспринимать более сложную информацию, когда у него кристалл более сложный.
Which is very important for the person, because when a person's liquid crystal is more complex, they are able to perceive more complex information.
Давайте глянем еще на один отчет.
So let's see one more report.
Развернуто, правда, у нас график. Я вот, так как файл PDF, я его не могу развернуть. График.
This graph is a bit rotated. As it is a PDF file, I don't know how to rotate it back.
Сейчас, что за результаты этого эксперимента?
But I will explain to you what the results of this experiment were.
Это исследование воды кондуктометрическим методом, или замер сопротивления воды.
This was, in this case, we measured the resistance of water.
Берется две кюветы с дистиллированной водой.
We took two vessels with distilled water.
Каждый вставляется два электрода.
And put two electrodes into each one.
И измеряется разность потенциалов на этих электродах.
And then we measure the difference in potentials of these two kinds of water.
А потом измеряется разность потенциалами между вот этими кюветами.
And then we measure the difference of potentials between these two vessels of water.
Если вода одинаковая в кюветах, то у нас разности потенциалов нет.
If the water in the two vessels was the same, this means that there is no potential.
Если под одну из кювет мы положим транслятор супер, то появится разность потенциала.
But if we put a translator super under one of the vessels, there is some difference in this case.
Здесь как раз вот явлен график изменения вот этого потенциала.
And here you can see the graph demonstrating the changes of this potential.
Сначала он был больше.
In the beginning it was higher. In the beginning this difference was higher.
Тоненькая линия – это то, что рисует прибор.
The thin line is the one which was drawn by the device.
А толстая вот эта линия – это аппроксимация логарифмической кривой.
And the thick line is the approximation of the logarithmic curve.
Ну вот, что интересно, что вот в этом отчете, который проводился тоже в Москве в одной лаборатории, был интересный вывод сделан.
This experiment was carried out in one laboratory in Moscow, and its result was its conclusion was very interesting.
У них очень большой опыт исследования разных вод.
In that laboratory, these scientists have a very rich experiment of studying different kinds of water.
И здесь мы видим, что вся разность потенциалов, она вот здесь в значениях минус, меньше нуля.
And here you can see that the difference between the potentials is lower than zero.
И вот там как раз есть вывод, что в силу того, что вот, именно такой характер зависимости, отрицательное значение вот этой кривой, то это хорошо.
And they came to the conclusion that the fact that this curve has a negative index, it is good.
Что это соответствует как раз хорошим природным водам, которые они исследуют.
This corresponds to the quality of good natural kinds of water which they studied.
Просто эта лаборатория исследовала много разных устройств, которые вот тоже люди приносили, которые вроде бы должны улучшать.
This laboratory studied many different kinds of water, which were brought there by different people, and these kinds of water were supposed to improve something.
В интернете я находил отчеты, которые были сделаны в лаборатории.
And on the internet, I saw a lot of different conclusions made during research carried out by this laboratory.
Но у них не было такого вывода, что это хорошо.
But there was no conclusion in other cases which would confirm that it was good.
Потому что там был другой характер зависимости.
Because the character of dependence was different in that case.
Но вот эти устройства, они в разных сферах применяются.
But these devices are used in different areas.
Задача, которую они решают, это задача согласования структур на структурном уровне человека с различными другими системами.
The tasks which are solved by them are the tasks of adjustment of the structure of the person with the structures of other objects.
С тем, чтобы уменьшить влияние на человека тех или иных негативных факторов.
And the goal is to reduce the influence of some negative factors on the person.
Ну вот давайте посмотрим вот отчет, в котором исследовали влияние такого устройства, которое называется у нас LAT.
Let's see the report after measuring the influence of the LUT device.
Ну, казалось бы, это такая маленькая вот штучка, что она может сделать?
You might think that such a small thing cannot produce significant influence.
То есть иногда у нас спрашивают, что же там внутри.
Yes, many people ask us what is inside.
Тут как раз можно на нем показать, потому что
We can show to you.
такая вот структура, да, вот совсем
Еще
маленький
поближе.
кусочек.
Oh, yes, there is a small rectangle there.
Это на тонкой пленочке.
Не видят. Можно прямо к камере? Yes, okay, you can see it. It is a structure which was put on a very thin film.
Ну, что-то разобрать достаточно сложно.
It is quite difficult to see anything there, but there you can see the structure.
Проводили следующий эксперимент.
The following experiment was carried out.
Брали мобильный телефон
We took a mobile phone
и измеряли количество излучений, которое идет от этого мобильного телефона.
and measured the amount of radiation produced by this mobile phone.
Момент связи его с базовой станцией. То есть нажимаем кнопку вызова и начинаем измерять.
At the moment of connection of this phone with the main station. So we just pressed on the button which connected the phone to the station and then began our measurement.
Но измеряется не абсолютное значение, которое меняется постоянно, а так называемая экспозиция, энергетическая экспозиция за 30 секунд.
What we are measuring not the absolute index, which is changing all the time, but the so-called energy exposition during 30 minutes.
Дело в том, что телефон излучает непостоянный импульс.
The thing is that the impulse radiated by the mobile phone is not constant.
То есть сначала большой уровень излучений у телефона,
In the beginning, the level of radiation of the mobile phone is very high,
потом, когда он установил связь с базовой станцией, он начинает уменьшать этот уровень излучения.
but once it has established the connection with the main station, the number of radiation begins to decrease
До такого уровня, который обеспечивает устойчивую связь.
to the level which will ensure stable connection.
И поэтому чем лучше связь, тем до меньшего уровня опускает свое излучение телефона.
So the lower the connection is, the lower the level of radiation will be.
Поэтому получаются разные кривые при разном качестве связи.
That's why there are different curves depending on the quality of connection.
Вот мы измеряли сначала без устройства LAT, делали несколько замеров.
So first we measured the level of radiation of the phone without the LUT device a few times. It is this column without using the LED.
А вторая колоночка, после того, как мы приклеили устройство LAT к телефону,
And the second column is the level of radiation after sticking the LUT to the mobile phone.
и сделали еще несколько замеров.
And then repeated the measurements a few times.
Оказалось, что в результате этого эксперимента мы получили снижение на 46% уровня излучения телефона.
And as a result of this experiment, it turned out that the level of radiation of the mobile phone decreased by 46%.
За счет чего же получился такой эффект?
But what enabled us to reach such an effect?
Ведь мы же не боремся с излучениями с помощью LAT.
Indeed, we are not fighting with the radiation by using the LUT.
Это совсем другая
It is an absolutely different ideology in our case.
Дело в том, что устройство ЛАД улучшило качество связи.
The thing is that the LAT device improved the quality of connection.
Вообще все трансляторы, они стараются уменьшить уровень помех, которые влияют на человека, на структурном уровне.
All translators are trying to decrease the level of distortions on the structural level.
Соответственно, когда мы имели с телефоном, за счет того, что уровень помех уменьшился, качество связи улучшилось.
So when we worked with the mobile phone, the level of distortion decreased, which enabled us to improve the quality of connection.
Соответственно, упал уровень излучения.
And that's why the level of radiation also decreased.
Дело в том, что устройство ЛАД, оно не является защитой в общепринятом смысле этого слова.
The thing is that the LAT device does not provide protection from the regular point of view, from the thing we usually mean by protection.
Дело в том, что влияние на человека электромагнитных полей заключается отрицательное их действие в том, что есть несогласование между структурами этих полей.
The thing is that the negative influence of electromagnetic fields on people is caused by the fact that there is no adjustment between these electromagnetic fields and the structure of the person.
То есть вот есть телефон, у него есть своя структура электромагнитного поля.
For example, you have a mobile phone which has its own electromagnetic structure, its own structure of the electromagnetic field.
Есть человек, у него тоже есть своя структура электромагнитного поля.
And there is a person who also has their own structure of their electromagnetic field.
И отрицательное влияние поля заключается в том, что это поле незнакомо человеку.
So the negative influence of the phone lies in the fact that its electromagnetic field is not known by the electromagnetic field of the person.
Это как некая помеха, которая приводит к тому, что организм тратит энергию на то, чтобы разобраться с этой помехой.
It is a kind of distortion which makes us lose energy in order to cope, in order to understand what this distortion is.
Когда мы применяем устройство ЛАД,
And when we use the LAT device,
приклеиваем его к телефону,
we stick it to the mobile phone.
Происходит упорядочивание структуры телефона,
We reach the effect of ordering the structure of the phone,
структуры излучения.
the structure of radiation of the phone.
И согласуется структура одна и структура другая, на структурном уровне они согласованы становятся.
And both structures get adjusted to each other on the structural level.
Это примерно вот как бы перекодировка структур с помощью таких устройств происходит.
This is a kind of changing the code of the structures on the structural level.
Ну, у нас много разных исследований, я тут не буду со всеми вас знакомить, потому что у нас время на это нет.
We have many different kinds of research here. I'm not going to introduce all of them to you, as we don't, just not to spend so much time on it.
Хотелось бы немножко остановиться на устройстве карта блага.
But I would like to say a word about application of the translator Blaga,
Пояснить, как она работает.
to explain to you how it works.
Все эти устройства работают на базе теории физических структур.
All these devices work. Their mechanism is based on the theory of physical structures.
То есть внутри как раз есть физические структуры, которые обеспечивают взаимодействие человека на этом структурном уровне, налаживают взаимодействие.
So there are physical structures inside which ensure functioning of the person on the structure level and interaction on this level.
Но здесь мы говорим, что это все работа со структурами времени.
But in this case, we say that we work with the structures of time.
Это упорядочение структур временных.
We bring the time structures to order.
Теория физических структур рассматривает время не как одномерную вещь, которая рассматривает классическая физика.
The theory of physical structures doesn't look at time as a one-dimensional thing, as it is usually studied in the usual physics. So I'll try to draw the illustration to you. All of us participate in some kind of events. The events can be presented as the kind of change. Something existed originally and then it turned into something else. So these changes for us are a manifestation.
Поэтому говорят, поле событий.
So we are calling this a field of events. The field of events are some events in which we take part. But if it's a field of events, it means that it is some kind of surface for us. And if it's a field, it means that there are at least two coordinates of time. In this field of events, we don't take part in all events. There is a border, a particular border, which we or maybe we were taught in a way that we should not do that. Maybe our mother educated us this way. There can be very different conditions which lead to the result that we don't take place in these, don't take part in these events. But this border, which we have set for ourselves, also depends on the third coordinate of time. It is the so-called cone of events. So this, it's the size of the cone of events is defined by other time coordinates. What does the Blaga card do? By adjusting the time structure and bringing it to order on the tactical time scale, we increase the index of this third coordinate. We decrease its dimensionality of interaction with time, which enables us to make our cone of events broader. Which enables us to create a new field of events, in which a person also can create connections. But what do we build connections for? In order to be able to receive some resources through these connections. Somebody calls this work. Somebody calls it scholarship. A person can receive some grants. And somebody else can create their own business. But a person has invented a system which is called money. Because no animals are engaged in such activities. No animal deals with money. But somehow they survive. But people have created a system in which money the thing which measures the process of exchanging resources. But the functioning of the Blaga card is not limited to solving money issues. Because the Russian term blago, which can be translated as benefits or good things or wealth, includes not only money, but also all other good things which are useful for people. For example, good relationships. One woman, one lady once came to our presentation and I asked her if she used the blago card. She said that yes, she was using it and she was noticing a good effect. I asked her what was the effect. And she told me that her relationships with her daughter improved a lot. And this improvement was so obvious that even her husband was very surprised. So for her, this was the wealth, this was the benefit. But you should also remember that by working with the blago card, you are changing this field of events. And if a person has some wishes, it doesn't mean that they must come true. But because the person might not understand that this wish is not good for them. That's why when we're speaking about the blago, about the good things and benefits, we should consider not only the wishes of the person, but how the world accepts these wishes. That's why the blago card helps to adjust the wishes of the person with the world. For example, a person has achieved some result in their life. The person has got on some peak of success. But what if they want more? It will be another peak. In order to reach the second peak, it is necessary to go down from the first peak. But sometimes people don't want to give up something they already have in order to gain something new. The blago card enables to establish the informational exchange between the person and the world. Suddenly a person begins to get new ideas, how to improve something in their activity. They begin to meet new people, they get new connections. But these are two different things, to receive information and to be able to use it. There might be some inner limitations which will not enable the person to go beyond some borders, some limitations. That's why the users of the blago card notice that something begins to change in their life. But we can't guarantee the kind of changes which will come to their life. Because everybody has their own life. And everybody meets his own events in his life. And everybody has his own expectations. That's why the changes which will happen in a person's life because of using the blago card will be good changes. The effect of normalization is telling us that we will not make the life worse by using the blago card. But how good it will be, it depends on the person himself, because the card can't work instead of the person. But most users begin to notice that some interesting events begin to take place in their life. These can be some interesting coincidences, some unexpected miracles. And it is very interesting that it's impossible to predict what exactly will change in the person's life. But there is one resource in a person which is priceless. This resource is called the time of life. All of us in this life are spending the time of our life. We're spending this resource in order to exchange it for some material things. But the life of a person is priceless. That's why if we have spent the resource of our life, the time of our life for doing something, we cannot spend it for something else. That's why we can say that the Blaga card is an optimizer of the time of life. There is such a concept as success. If you were successful in getting to the right place at the right moment, then it is success. And if you were not successful to get there, then you turned out to be at another point. So the Blaga card enables to increase the success of the person. But there is one more important quality of the Blaga card. It is the possibility of decreasing the influence of catastrophes on a person. Because a person might get into very complicated situations because they tend to make mistakes. And these complicated situations do not always end in a way which is beneficial for the person. And the Blaga card helps to increase the opportunities for the person to escape from these unpleasant situations. We can't exclude them completely, but we can decrease their influence on people. And in this case, it is difficult to see any results from application of the Blaga card. Because if some events have not happened to you, it is difficult for you to say what would life be if they happened to you. But the users of the Blaga card noticed some interesting details, some interesting changes in their life, which prove that the Blaga card had the effect. One acquaintance of mine said that he doesn't use the Blaga card all the time. I asked him why is he not using it all the time. And he told me that when he uses the Blaga card, whatever he does during this day becomes very efficient, so he manages to do a lot during the day, a lot of different things. So he uses it only when he has some extreme situations, when he needs to do a lot of different things during a short period of time. But he's afraid to get addicted to it. So maybe one day he needs to be able to work more efficiently, but he will already have exhausted these resources, so he will not be able to make it more efficient. So everybody uses this card in their own way. Another acquaintance of mine was a businessman. He engaged himself in many different projects. And then when he began to use the Blaga card, he stopped doing his business and began 20 минут? Так, верно. В час же на обед, да? Так, еще 20 минут. So, 20 минут. So he gave up his business and engaged himself in mountain skiing, which was his main hobby. He's also very good at explaining other people how to mountain ski, and he has a talent of teaching others doing this. So now his friends, businessmen, take him when they go to ski in Alps in order to let him explain different things to them. They take him as instructor. So he told me that he could never think of the situation when he would be able to do his favorite thing and he would get money for it. And there was also another case. One lady bought the Blaga Gold card. But a year later, she told me that she was very surprised because she had expected that she would earn a lot of money after she got this card. But her salary stayed the same. And we began to analyze what had changed in her life during that year and what she needed those money for. The thing is that she visits some yoga club in her city. And they have some guru in India to whose ashram they go once in 3 years. So this is the biggest event in their life. So this is a very big event in their life to which they are getting prepared for a couple of years. Then they're doing this, and then they keep speaking about it for a few more years. Because India is a wonderful country and many people feel comfortable there. Yeah. It turned out that during this year, her daughter went to a cruise to the Mediterranean. There she met some Indian guy. And they fell in love with each other. And now the daughter is living in India. She has already had a baby. So now this lady goes to India once in a couple of months to be with her daughter and her grandchild. So for her, trips to India are not anything special now, but they are just a part of her everyday life. but she didn't find the connection between these changes in her life and the Blaga card. She just didn't notice that her salary didn't increase, so this expectation didn't come true. That's why you should be attentive to your life to notice some changes. And during our practical classes, we are doing some special exercises with the translators. In order to be able to feel how they influence our life and how can we use them with most efficiency. But what is the difference between the usual Blaga and the Blaga card, the Blaga Gold? So the usual Blaga enables us to widen our cone of events in some particular way, at some particular scales. But there are people for whom such scales of benefits is not high enough. They need much higher scales. That's why there is a difference between them. For example, this small one is the usual Blaga card, and this is Blaga Gold. It enables to increase the flow of benefits at higher scales. The Blaga Brilliant enables to increase it even more. So far, we have 4 levels. It is the regular Blaga, the Blaga Silver, the Blaga Gold, and also the Blaga Brilliant. These are different scales of the flow of benefits with which a person deals in their life. So the events in which a person takes place are kind of points of entrance of the flow of benefits. But there is an entering flow and the flow which comes out. In fact, these are 2 parts of the same flow. But when we get something, when something reaches us, we need to put it somewhere. So also we have keys. This is the keys for increasing the flow of the benefits, the flow of the wealth. These keys also improve the functioning of this flow of good things. But they enable us to increase another characteristic of this flow. The Blaga card kind of enables us to increase the diameter of the tube through which we get these benefits. Что другое открытие? Расшарено вот это сейчас. Нет, мы сейчас точно. Давайте берем. Да, точно. Угу. Не могу выйти из этого режима. Завис, кажется. Нет, все нормально. Мы уже не расшариваем здесь? Все нормально. Они видят вот это, да? Да, они видят то, что надо, все в порядке. And the keys increase the speed of the flow of good things. So they're creating the positive back connection, opposite connection with the initial flow, with the flow which is an entrance and the flow which comes out. But this connection usually makes the speed of the flow faster. So it is possible to buy the keys in order to increase the speed of these flows. Do you have any questions? Yes, Susanna? They are used with the благо. Ключи используются только с благой? Ключи используются только с благой? Yeah, the keys are used only with the благо card. Они тоже в форме Translighters, тоже в форме структуры. It is not necessary, yes. I will explain to you now how to use the card and the keys. We recommend to carry the благо card with you, close to the body. In the pocket, for example. Yeah, you can wear it as a necklace on your neck or as a badge. Because the cards work with the human light system. So the closer the card is to the body, the higher is the interaction with the human light system, the denser is the human light system. Of course, it's not very convenient to carry it in summer when it's hot. But now we are working at creating a series of jewelry in which we can insert these structures. At the moment, we are creating such a piece with the Translighter superstructure. And gradually, we will create it with the благо card too. But it is not necessary to carry the keys with you. There is a one-time transaction, which when you want to activate the key, you should send us an email telling that you would like to activate a key with a particular number. And each key has its own number. And once you get the confirmation that the key has been activated, you should put the благо card and the key together for some particular time, for example, for one night, for a few hours. And then you can use the key, for example, for activating water. You can put it under the pot with flowers. Or you can use it for pets. Or put it into the wallet, your wallet or some member of your family. It depends on you, it's your choice. Да, конечно.
I'm not sure I well understood. With this time, 3 axes with time, it's difficult to represent. And then the cone of event. Is it from one time t and then the possibility of occurrence of wider scope of event?
Yes. Okay. Okay, we'll explain it one more time. Вопрос по конусу событий, об этих осях, как они устроены, не совсем понятно. Как устроены. So the question is regarding the cone of events and the axis. То есть там 3 оси времени. Вопрос в этом. Here we're speaking about the time-space.
Здесь мы не имеем в виду пространство, как обычно мы говорим, о структуре времени, не о пространстве времени.
We're not speaking about the usual space, but we are speaking about the structure and the space of time. We can see that it's a model vision. Just to make it easier for us to imagine how it works. In fact, the processes take place in a bit different way, because we are speaking about the process of structuring time, as time is a structure from the point of view of the theory of physical structures. And if there are some defects in the structure of time, this means that something in the structure of our time is not being manifest, but this thing could be manifest. But structures of time can have different scales. That's why we're dealing with different tasks. They may have different scales. There are operative tasks which deal with short time scales. And this is the time scale at which our organism is functioning. So we have the translator super, which works particularly with this time scale. We have the translator Blaga, which works with tactical time scales, which are longer than the operative ones. So here we are dealing with the time scales at which we are planning something. But planning is already working with the future.
So your code is that a model with a positive pointing from the space. One is one pattern. Yes. And then this 4-bit space points are organized into patterns. You can track small, short time patterns and long time.
То есть каждая точка конуса определяет конкретный масштаб времени. We are also dealing with different scales of events. For example, we have begun to do some project. But it's possible to do some project. It's possible to do it within 3 months, and it's possible to do it within half a year or a year. So there are different scales. But speaking about the flow of the good things, it can be similar in these both cases. So you can earn $1 million during 3 months, during a year, or during a half a year. So we will try after the lunch in practice how you can interact with the structures of time and how you can try to feel the time. Are there any other questions? Это вы изобрели полностью технологию или что-то подобное существовало раньше? So, I have never met any, I have never seen any similar technology, so I think it was created by me. But it was born from the idea which is connected with money. With money. I had one acquaintance who told me that I should think something out which would help people to earn more money. And at first I thought that I should invent some structure which would enable to clear and to clean the structures of money, to clean them from, to clean the money as carriers of information which we are exchanging. But then we began to analyze this topic. How do people interact with the flows of money? And we understood that finally we are still dealing with interaction with time. Because the main resource is the time of life. But you can spend it and control it in different ways. That's why our main goal is to enable a person to save the time of life and to get some particular resource with most efficiency. And then a person gets a question, which kind of card they need, the usual Blaga or the Blaga Gold. In fact, it is very obvious from the price. If a person feels, for example, that it is too expensive for them to buy the Blaga Gold card, this means that this person doesn't work at these scales yet. Because some people thought that if they buy the Blaga Gold card now, their flow of good things, of benefits will grow immediately. That's why they thought that maybe they could lend the money, they can borrow the money from somebody and then just return it. But the transfer from one particular flow to another, scales of flow, its meaning lies in the fact that the person should be able to work with this flow of good things. All of you understand that there is a difference between a small business and a big business, and you need to possess different skills and to be able to work at different scales. So if you give a person a Blaga Gold card, but this person doesn't know how to work at this level and doesn't possess the necessary knowledge and skills, this thing will be useless for him. That's why we created this difference in price, so that the person could make the right choice. Of course, the initial cost is the same. But this is designed for the user to make the correct choice. This is the key, the clue on how to choose. That's why the financial flow. That's why the financial flow doesn't always increase immediately, because a person might think that they need a lot of money, but in fact they need to solve another task first. And the person might think that they should spend some time of their life first to earn some money, and afterwards they can solve the task. But maybe this task can be solved without money. As it was in case with the guy who dedicated his life to mountain skiing and began to be invited there to those mountain resorts, but before he spent his own money for that. Кто? Ага. Мгм. And it also happened to us when we were invited to India somehow, because we were just needed in this trip.
Поэтому карта блага помогает человеку как раз настроиться на вот те желания, которые действительно нужны, помогает реализации именно этих желаний.
That's why the Blogger card enables a person to adjust, to tune themselves to the wishes they really need and to come true in their life.
Ну вот еще такой пример.
And I have one more simple example.
Недавно нам товарищ написал,
Not a long time ago, we got a testimonial from one user.
у него был свой бизнес рекламы.
He had his own advertising business.
Ну, небольшая рекламная агентство.
He had a small advertising agency.
Но как-то вот все стало не очень хорошо, и бизнес, можно сказать,
But somehow the things didn't go well and the business almost disappeared.
но у него была карта блага.
But he had a Blogger card.
Но тем не менее бизнес.
But in spite of that fact, his business was not successful and he had to close it.
Вернее, карту блага мы сделали по технологии диджитал. У нас мы можем передавать по интернету через файл.
And then he got a digital Blogger card because we are also able to transfer the structures through digital files.
Он получил карту блага Gold.
And he got a Blogger Gold digital card.
И тут как-то решил все-таки на нее настроиться.
And he decided to tune himself to it
И подумать, что же он на самом деле хочет.
and to think what he really needs.
И придумал себе, как он хотел, чтобы складывался бизнес. Не его собственный, а чтобы он за зачем бизнес строит, но ему было хорошо.
And he began to imagine how a business should function, maybe not his own business, but somebody else's business, which he would like to enter, so that everything functioned well.
И буквально где-то через месяц такая сложилась ситуация, что ему удалось поучаствовать в конкурсе.
And a month later, there was an opportunity for him to take part in competition for participating in such a business.
Была большая конкуренция там между другими людьми.
There was a very high competition with other skilled people.
И сначала ему сказали, что он не годится.
In the beginning, he was told that he wasn't good for this position.
Но почему-то оказалось, что все, кто до него прошел, не могут работать на этом месте.
But then it turned out that all people who had passed, who were above him in this list, could not work for some reason.
По разным причинам.
There were different reasons.
И он сейчас в этом бизнесе работает, это не его собственный бизнес, а наемным работником.
So now he works for this business. It is not his own business, so he works for somebody.
Но получает он гораздо больше, чем в бизнесе, который у него происходит.
But he earns much more money than he used to earn when he had his own business.
Это как раз вот тот случай, когда ему надо было спуститься с горки, чтобы начать надо забираться дальше.
So this was a case when he had to go down from one peak in order to get on the second peak.
И в этом плане ему карта блага.
And in this case, the Blogger card helped him.
Сейчас он уже приобрел, он уже по технологии диджитала, не как.
But by now he has already got the Blogger card, not the digital file. Yes, sure.
So what is the basis, like the person is receiving some energy from his cards. So how this card is creating the energy? There are some specific the patterns of some design. What is the source of that energy?
В чем находится источник энергии, который человек получает из карты? Если там какой-то графический файл, что-то. Yes, you can say that there is a graphical file inside. There is a special structure which looks as a picture, a particular picture. But there is no source of energy inside. There is another principle. You can speak about the energy of time from this point of view. Графический файл внутри карты. Yes, there is a graphical file inside the card, not on the surface, but inside.
Ну вот технология Digital, она позволяет соединять структуры с любым файлом.
And the digital technology enables us to connect the structure to any files. Не знаю, здесь нет. Найдем в перерыве. Найдем. After the break, we will demonstrate to you magnets, which were created according to this technology. После обеда? So after the lunch, we'll answer after the lunch, okay? Ну, можно же идти на обед уже. А ныне? Также ты в Будапеште. Также в колик. Половы? Ага, так еще не готов обед, можно пока ответить. Еще обед не готов, за нами придут потом и скажут, потому что сегодня много посетителей. Можно ответить на вопросы в чате? Там есть вопросы. Okay, well, the lunch is not ready yet because there are too many customers today, so we have still a few more minutes to answer the questions in the chat, or maybe also in the classroom. What do you put into the blogger card? Do you mean you put Bible inside the blogger? What is the structure of blogger different from super? Что вы кладете внутрь благи? Кладете ли вы Библию внутрь благи? Чем отличается структура благи от структуры супер? Why Bible? As for the difference between the blogger and the super, we have already spoken about it. There is a difference at scales, or at which we are working, scales of time. Can you hear me online? Он спрашивал, какой материал вы кладете, что конкретно кладете. Что кладете, ну то есть структуру. There are special nanomaterials which are put on a thin film, which creates the structure inside each translator. Ну да. The questions of religion are very important for the humanity. Because this is attraction between the person and the creator of the whole world, the whole universe. And it is very important for the person to be connected with this creator very closely. And each of us has some divine part in us. But different people have their own imagination, have their own concept of this creator. That's why in different systems of description, they can be different. In the Bible, we have one particular system of description. In Quran, it is different. And we can't say that one system is more correct and some other system is less correct. There are also other systems of description. For example, the Vedic system. There are some Indian systems with their own pantheon of gods. That's why when we were creating these structures, we did not want to be based on one particular system.
Считаем, что у каждого человека есть связь с этим божественным, что в этом мире представлено.
We believe that each person has a connection with this divine.
И важно создать условия для того, чтобы эта связь проявилась более полно.
And we must create the conditions to enable to manifest this connection with the divine as much as it's possible.
И вот трансляторы как раз помогают выбирать вещи, которые человека могут продвигать на духовном пути.
And the translators help us to decrease the distortion, which prevent a person from going further on this spiritual path.
Но у каждого свой путь.
But every person has their own path.
И вот человек сам выбирает, каким путем он будет идти.
And each of us chooses ourselves which way we should go.
И трансляторы не вмешиваются в выбор человека.
And the translators don't interfere in the choice of the person. Okay, this is the answer. Let's see the other question. Еще есть вопросы. Okay, one more comment. We're speaking about the human light system.
Если говорить про human light system, это часть, это световая система.
So first of all, this is a light system.
Но когда говорят, допустим, про свет, что знание — это свет.
But when it is said that knowledge is light,
Любовь — это свет.
love is light,
Бог — это свет.
God is light.
Это один и тот же свет или это разный?
Is it the same light or are these different kinds of light?
И как можно, вот, допустим, представить с научной точки зрения Троицу?
And how is it possible to imagine the Saint Trinity from the scientific point of view?
Вот академик Раушенбах, он как-то озадачился вопросом. Есть ли в математике такой объект, который бы соответствовал вот описанию Троицы?
And there was a academician, Rauschenbach, who asked himself a question. Is there a mechanism in mathematics which will be able to describe this mechanism of the Saint Trinity? And he came to the conclusion that it might be the vector of the three-dimensional space. And three projections of it.
Поэтому три проекции вектора — это соответствие как раз принципу Троицы. Это один объект, и в то же время их три.
So the three projections of the vector can be a representation of the Saint Trinity. It is one object and three objects at the same time.
А физический объект есть такой, который соответствует принципу Троицы?
And is there a physical object which would correspond to the principle of the Trinity?
Это свет.
It is the light.
Ну, допустим, есть луч света,
For example, there is a ray of light,
и он падает на какое-то тело.
and it is falling on some physical body.
Что произойдет со светом?
What will happen to this light?
Часть света пройдет сквозь, да,
A part of this light will come through
и выйдет.
and get out.
Часть света отразится,
A part of the light will be reflected,
а часть поглотится, да, рассеется внутри, находится внутри.
and a part of this light will be absorbed and will be dispersed inside.
Ну вот, пожалуйста, есть единый, как бы, исходный луч, да,
So there is some initial ray of light, only one,
и есть три его проявления после взаимодействия.
and there are three manifestations of it after the interaction.
Поэтому можно брать описание религиозное какие-то, из одной религии, из другой.
That's why you can take religious descriptions from some particular religions,
Можно пытаться находить научное представление для этих знаний.
and you can also look for scientific proofs or scientific models of this knowledge.
Поэтому человек как бы в себе проявляет. И вот этот свет божественный в нем есть.
That's why,
Он связан с Творцом.
that's why a person also manifests this divine light, because a person is connected with the Creator.
И проявляет свет любви, когда он может передать свою любовь через свет другому человеку.
A person manifests the light of love when this person is able to give their own light to the other person.
Проявляет в себе свет знаний, который он может получить не только читая какие-то книги, но и воспринимая эти знания через интернет.
A person manifests the light of knowledge not only while reading something, but also while perceiving the information through the by internet.
У нас как бы такой научный подход к этим всем вопросам.
So here's our approach. We have a scientific approach to all these issues, all these questions, including the questions about the divine. Yes, please. So this question is regarding the placebo effect and the translighters. The placebo effect means that a person is able to influence themselves by their consciousness. But we carried out many different experiments. For example, we carried out experiments with laboratory rats. We took a group of control animals and a group of experiment animals. And we stuck the translated supercards under the cells of the laboratory group. Then we took the blood samples of these rats and compared. And after studying the blood cells, we calculated the so-called anti-stress potential. The leukocytes, monocytes, and other blood cells. And depending on the state of the animal, the difference between these blood cells is also different. We carried out the experiment according to this method during 1 month. And it turned out that the difference between the initial and the between the control group and the experimental group was very significant. And the control group, the stress level of the control group was 26 times higher than that of the laboratory group. So the life of some group of rats became much happier than the life of the rest, the life of control ones. And the same thing happens to people. When they begin to use the translighters, the amount of happiness in their life increases a bit. So there were some experiments carried out with ferments, serotonin and some other ones. I've demonstrated to you some experiments which were carried out with leukocytes, with white blood cells. And during the same research, we carried out experiments with ferments. A ferment was just disposed in water. We checked its activity. And then we put the translator super under the test tube with this ferment. And sometime later, the sensitivity of this ferment was checked again. So first of all, we took the peroxidase. It is a kind of ferment. The sensitivity of peroxidase ferment grew by not 26%, oh, by 86%. And the temperature resistance grew by 30%. Then we took a more complex ferment. Как называется? Alcohol This is the ferment which processes the alcohol in our blood and removes the rest of the elements you get as a result from your organism. And the sensitivity of this ferment grew. Grew 2.6 times after application of the translator super. It grew by 260%. And its stability to temperature grew by 60%. This means that when we use the translighters, the ferments begin to function better in our organism. So some processes in the organism begin to function better